As we await No Time to Die with bated breath, I thought I might take a look at a Bond film. One that, to me, epitomizes everything that can be great, and everything that can be less than great about the franchise. The World Is Not Enough, with Pierce Brosnan, directed by Michael Apted. The 6th highest grossing Bond flick opened to middling reviews and seems to sit just above good old Die Another Day in terms of its reputation and legacy. And, well, yeah, it is flawed, but I also watch it almost every time I'm in a Bondian mood. Its shortcomings are mostly obvious, but its virtues, while there, aren't as much. So let's talk about them. The World Is Not Enough finds Bond playing bodyguard to a young oil heiress named Elektra King, who was recently kidnapped by an international terrorist named Renard and had to do some pretty messed up things to escape. Her father was assassinated by the very same man later on. Written by Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, who would go on to pen Casino Royale, a lot of the scenes are very dynamically scripted, with actual arcs. At the very least, the relationships between Bond, Elektra, M, and Renard are all well thought out, and in some ways almost seem like a dry run for Casino Royale and Skyfall's darker, more three-dimensional look at the characters. Bond worries that M might be compromised by her personal relationship with Elektra, and the way that she's been tortured and hardened by loss is something he intimately understands. Renard is a great villain, too. An MI6 agent did manage to put a bullet in his head, and it's still lodged there, slowly killing off his senses. He can't feel any pain as a result. It's a cool quirk that puts him firmly in that 007 realm, but Robert Carlyle underplays him for the most part. A smart choice, after Jonathan Pryce hammed it up a little too much in Tomorrow Never Dies. Maybe I'm biased though, as he is my lucky Nightfire character. 1v1 me on Snowblind, pistols only, you'll see what's up. Most importantly, we also see the many different facets of Bond as a character very effectively. We see him as a detective, not just magically hacking into computers to get plot info, though he does do this. We see him note information and observe behavior, and we come to epiphanies with him the way you would in an actual detective film. We see him as a charmer, of course. We also see him as a ruthless killer who finds it all too easy to detach. Pierce really shines in this one, and I think it's his best performance in the role. He's clearly enthralled at having a little bit more to do. I love GoldenEye as much as any young lad with blood in his veins, and it's objectively the high point for Pierce, but let's face it, by contrast, Bond spends most of that movie like this.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
For your eyes only.
As a victim of Stockholm Syndrome with a tortured past, we understand what's driven Elektra to madness and revenge, and we feel uncomfortable once she becomes the bad guy. Apted actually brought on his then-wife, screenwriter Dana Stevens, to beef up her character, as well as her relationship with M. So much, in fact, that a final rewrite by Bruce Fierstein was commissioned as well, as Bond himself had slipped into the background somewhat. Still, Sophie Marceau is so goddamn good, she almost upstages everyone anyway.
Something snaps in the victim's mind. The captive falls in love with her captor.
How dare you? How dare you? That animal, that monster? He disgusts me. You disgust me.
And then there's Denise Richards as Christmas Jones, possibly the most thankless role in this entire franchise, and that is a competitive category. Yes, the sexy scientist cliché. She has no chemistry with Pierce, they barely flirt or talk outside of spewing exposition, and there's no indication whatsoever that she's the least bit interested in him the entire film. But of course, they go on a romantic date at the end and bang while everyone at MI6 watches, which, okay, this is actually kind of funny.
007.
Richards has taken a lot of flack over the years for this performance, and while that is deserved, there's so little on the page for her here that I think the writers should be shouldering some of that blame too. And the issues don't start or stop with her. In spite or perhaps because of having an actual compelling drama unfold at its center, the shoehorned Bondian elements feel a little painful at times. Look, one of my core tenets with these videos was to discuss films in a net positive way. There are enough channels out there reductively nitpicking movies to death. But the puns in this movie hurt my soul.
Now, I dare say, 007, that you've met your match with this machine.
Yeah, new model, improved specs.
Bruh.
It's also an unavoidably big issue in a Bond movie when the action scenes are kind of boring. Mostly it's due to flat cinematography and editing. I don't know if it was in a rushed effort to get the film made, delegating entirely to another unit or what, but there's so little coverage. There are tons of static wides and bland masters that get cut back to over and over again, though nothing is changing in them. They don't punch in for dramatic reactions, they don't cut around to show us different angles of things, cameras seldom move. Especially coming off GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies, how flat the action photography is stands out. And what is happening in the sequences themselves is cool. The conceptual ideas behind them are exciting and fine. They're just not presented well. I mean, look at this final fight. They're just bouncing around in a fucking tumble dryer, and it can't help but be something of an anticlimax. The cold open with the office skirmish and the boat chase are pretty solid, but it's so weird to watch a James Bond movie where the spectacle is often the least interesting part. I could see Apted and the writers turning in an initial draft in the lengthy writing process that was even darker and more stripped down. The aforementioned opening set piece in an office is the smallest, most grounded, and best visualized bit of action. That might be because it was on the page the longest. The World Is Not Enough is fascinating as well as frustrating. For everything special it brings to the table, there's something holding it back. The writing is great until it isn't, the set pieces are creative, but they're blandly photographed. It gives Bond one love interest who's complicated and compelling as well as beautiful, and another who's beautiful but little else. I do ultimately still have a soft spot for it. I'm willing to put up with it at its worst to enjoy it at its best. It's a potent reminder of the ways a 007 outing can annoy and disappoint, but also excite and surprise us.